Yeah, I'm not a scholar on the transition from, the agrarian economy in China to this industrial economy. It's certainly what people who are scholars about China and about the environmental injustice of this kind of labor say is that it's very similar, right, to 19th century industrialization in America and Europe in terms of this dichotomy or this bad choice between poison and a wage, right? I'm not sure how much the film does humanize the people. It seemed, I felt like it was just kind of this cog in the machine, sort of. I was thinking about Marx a lot when I was looking at those images, because, yeah, the humans become animated when the video is going, but they still are just labor.
Except for the Chinese Martha Stewart.
Except for the Chinese Martha Stewart, but they're just embodiment of labor, right? And they're not. We don't know anything about what they love. We don't know what they think about nature. We don't know anything about what they believe in.
There's no
or
talking.
Their children or anything. So it's a very mono sort of image of the human in the manufactured landscape.
I think the filmmaker is always struggling against oversimplification as well. At several points in the film, I thought of those magazine photos of Sally Struthers surrounded by starving children. Well, I mean, none of us is in favor of children starving. No one is in favor of pollution. But the opportunity to say, this is what we have to do to relieve pollution. This is the trade-off. This is what we must give up. Was just never taken up, and I understand the desire to remain objective, to at least to draw back from being ideological or political, but the difficulty of slipping into simplistic images is really a challenge, and I don't think the filmmaker always met that challenge. But I agree with you that the scenes where they showed the beauty of the landscape, the industrialized landscape, I think were a way of making the film more complex, and not allowing me simply to say this is bad and this is good.
Did anyone on the panel ever see a film with a similar theme, with a strange name, Koyanis Kwatsi? We're informed in the film that it's Inuktitut, which is Eskimo language, for a life out of balance. Did anyone on the panel, Jeff?
I've seen it once, a while. I saw it a long time ago. So I do know that, I do remember it's a series of a lot of images. I don't remember lots of exposition in it, if I recall correctly. Is that
There was no dialogue. It was all music, and rather, in fact, rather bombastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember it being somewhat similar, but I haven't seen it recently enough to draw more sort of distinct
I haven't seen it. What did you think? Did you?
Well, I don't want to digress on this if no one has seen it, because it's a pointless thing. It would be all I can say is it would be worthwhile to see it, to compare it to this film.
I want to see it again now, having seen it.
So is it better to have people recycling e-waste or not?
Well, that's not the only way to do it.
No, it's not the only way to do it.
So, I mean, there are safe, controlled ways to do it, and so...
And where do those safe, controlled ways generate? Do they generate from the organic agrarian landscape, or do they generate from the technologically advanced portion of society?
You mean, where is that work conducted?
No, where does this ideas of, creating the computer and then recycling the computer in an ecologically or human health, the human health technology for maintaining a high life expectancy, which, yes, it's probably terrible for those folks, but, poor Chinese folks were dying of cholera 30 years ago, right? And weren't living this long anyway. I mean, you know what I'm saying? We exchanged one risk of early, of a short longevity for another.
Well, we didn't.
Somewhat, maybe. That's starting to turn a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, maybe it's not where the idea about how to do things in a cleaner, safer way comes from, it's about who's willing to pay the higher price for those products. I mean, we know how to do that, but we are already paying, like I'm already paying $1,000 for the Apple computers that I love so dearly and all the technology that I use. And so I think that the knowledge about that is one thing, but it's about, global markets.
Right, but here, the thing is so we have the technological abilities to create or to maintain some version of standard of living. It's just it doesn't transcend to 7 billion people.
If not everyone can live like us.
Would we have a sustainable, high-end, economically viable society at 1 billion people?
At 1 billion?
Yeah.
I mean, could everyone live like us if it was just 1 billion of us? Could everyone live
We'd
like?
probably live better.
I suppose so. I mean, I don't know, but I one thing that I've been reading about quite a few times now is that with the number of people there are today, certainly not everyone. There's simply not enough resources for everyone to have the same sort of excessive consumption of energy and resources as Americans. So talk about culpability, and for us to judge others, say you shouldn't want to live like us, and yet continue living the way we do, puts us in an embarrassing position.
Well, anyone who says we shouldn't live like we do gets ridiculed.
Yeah.
So,
right.
by our leaders.
Yeah.
But from an aesthetic standpoint, the transitions in the film from black and white to color I thought were interesting and called my attention. And often the transitions would include a black and white photograph, and then might move to black and white video, and then the color. But one of the things that the black and white reminded you of, the black and white photographs also reminded you of, if you're old enough, is our photos post-World War II of people in rubble, standing in rubble and going through rubble and looking through things. Their world has been destroyed, and it was a black and white world. And so there's this connection across, across the years. I thought that was sort of interesting.
Yeah, it did look like that.
Mm-hmm.
So too.
That dehumanizing aspect that Elaine was talking about, I very much agree with that.
Congratulations for the poster, by the way. That was a very intelligent choice of photo for the poster.
Well, as far as dehumanization, I noticed in the factory not a word was spoken. Everyone had to maintain complete silence. And I can't imagine the work is mind-numbing as it is, but if you're forbidden to even talk to your neighbor, that's pretty dehumanizing. And then the idea that you have to tear down your own house and destroy, obliterate the place where you've lived and where you've had an impact on the landscape. I thought the psychological aspect of that would be difficult to understand.
Well, even the opening of the factory, going from row to row to row, it was so goddamn boring. But it catches.
An aesthetic success.
This is what it's like to work for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day. You're going to be just as bored. But I couldn't help asking myself, all right, I get it. Fine, now to what end? What is the direction that the film wants to go? And I agree with you about the narrative was very. I think there was a narrative, or there were multiple narratives, but there wasn't an overarching unity, and that doesn't mean that they had to have a political position, but for me, there needed to be some connection between the different images. Besides, pollution is bad, and sometimes recycling is good, unless you're burning motherboards.
We have this thing, though, like, I saw that, and that factory is a very efficient and productive place.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it?
I mean,
On the film. Okay, right. All right.
no, but I worked in a GM plant that was a mile long, and I loaded trucks on a dock in Bridgeport, Chicago. That thing was a half a mile long. So it's my APS figure. It's actually there's something kind of liberating by mind-numbing work. If you're, to a scholar, manual labor, that's a terror.
I could watch it for hours.
But the idea, one of the things is that, is it better to have this, like, this really intense human construct. If you were to, have human construct, maybe some small buffer zone, and then wildland. These ideas of taking Shanghai and building it up into big, tall skyscrapers, I think that's a great idea. The worst thing is they have, to go from here to downtown Miami on one-story buildings.
The model was
Right. It's
was
like-
touched too.
Like, you know what I'm saying? It's
Mhm.
almost like we don't leave room because everything's got this like half. We've got this half mentality. Like, okay, I want to live in a city, but I want my own trees in my own backyard, my own space with my fence around it, and so I'm going to have 10,000 square foot lot. Well, really, if you live in a city, you should live in 800 square foot apartment
Mhm.
somewhere, and then leave the rest of the land to do its thing, its biogeochemical, ecological functioning thing, right? And it's kind of that. So the dichotomy that this movie maybe showed a little bit. I don't think that I don't necessarily want to say that I kind of appreciate the intensity of the urban. Because I could, if we were balanced, we would have the intensity of the non-developed also. We
But
have
that's a
this
great
kind of-
point. With those long shots of Shanghai, made the 2- and 3-story dwellings look very, very idyllic and romantic in comparison to the sterile skyscrapers until you came in close, and then they were just slums.
Yeah.
The real healthy places were the skyscrapers.
Right.
And where else would you put an additional 4 million people?
Although when that happens in China, because it happens in Beijing, those traditional housing,
Mhm.
it's not like those poor people move into the skyscrapers.
That's right.
They're
That was clear.
displaced.
That was
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is one of the problems with that kind of.
He handled the transitions between the idealized model and the real city and back again. That also was something that was.
So why the old lady in a high skyscraper? She's the one who didn't want to move so much. She's still there.
She's just hanging out the staircase doing her knitting. I think too that cities are also places of nature, right? And so we know that urban ecology tells us that there's incredible amounts of diversity and interesting things that happen in cities, and so it's not like there's cities and then there's nature,
No, but I think the demand that cities and civilization put on geographically,
they're different.
They are different, but it's this like inefficient loss of function that comes from low density, right? A road that carries 100 people a day on it still covers the same impermeable surface than a road the same size that would carry 1,000 people a day.
There's definitely better ways to do it.
Your comments kind of remind me of something I think that Portland practices, and I think that they call it, although I might be misremembering the term, the Portland Industrial Zone, which delimits a space around the city of Portland and says that industrial construction can only happen within these regions. And one of the reasons behind that concept is, I guess, to prevent the idea of urban sprawl just kind of reaching out endlessly. So you can get from kind of the Portland downtown city center to forested regions in about 20 minutes, as opposed to 2 hours
Well,
or
we're
3
supposed
hours
to
that you
have
get in LA or something. Yeah.
We have
so
an urban
it's
development
trying to-
boundary, but
yeah.
Ours is very porous.
Yes.
We actually want to look into that.
But it also kind of made me think with the idealized future of Shanghai is where is that division going to be between the city boundaries and all of these urban constructed landscapes of waste that we're also seeing in the film? How close are they going to be together? How are they going to be joined together? And what are the kind of the issues of that kind of proximity, or avoiding that kind of proximity too, putting the industrial regions way out from where people are living so that they can be hidden.
This movie also reminds me of a bit of a debate we had in the department. Len might remember this. Not too long ago, I read an article in, I don't know, National Geographic or something, where they said, where they're saying it's now the age of the Anthropocene. Was it Paul Crutzen said, Holocene's over, it's the age of the Anthropocene. So I emailed the department to see what they thought, and I got quite a few responses. A lot of people had a lot of strong thoughts about it. But essentially, geologists are not easily compressed by changes that people have wrought upon the Earth, saying the Earth doesn't even notice. We'll come and go, the Earth won't even notice. But now, even geologists are starting to step back and say maybe we will be in the geologic record. The incredible increase in CO2, the monocultures of pollen, the huge changes in pollen, the coral reef record. I mean, I'm a geographer, not a geologist, but this movie kind of brings that home for me. This is kind of the tip of the sword right here, even though they don't really talk about elevated CO2, although that's certainly implied in all that coal combustion, or the pollen record, or the coral reef record. But that's something interesting that scientists are kind of talking about. And the Long-Term Ecological Research Program, NSF, is now kind of embraced the Anthropocene, that the Holocene is over. And there's a session coming up at the ASM, which it's something about the Anthropocene. So this idea that it's not just environmental alarmism or something like that, but scientists are actually saying this is going to be in the record a million years from now, millions of years from now. What we have done will be in the record. Maybe 100 years ago it wouldn't have been true. There are now a lot of people, and I'm interested.
The sixth great extinction.
Yes, yes, and there was debate.
Geological history.
Yes.
The fossils of the future will be much fewer in genetic diversity after the age of man.
Yeah, but I remember your response. You said you used to not subscribe to that, but that now you're starting to.
Mostly from the levels of biological
Yeah.
change.
Do we have any other questions?
That was very thought-provoking film.
Thank you
We made
so
a
much.
small-